So picture this. I'm lounging in my backyard pool on a sunny Saturday afternoon, feeling the warmth on my skin, water gently lapping around me. The kids are playing nearby, and all seems right with the world, until suddenly, out of nowhere, I hear a loud banging on the side of my house. Hey, get out of that pool. My peaceful afternoon was abruptly shattered by none other than Karen, the self-designated HOA enforcer who had made my life a bureaucratic nightmare since I moved into the neighborhood. I froze, squinting in disbelief. "Excuse me." I called back, unsure if I had heard her correctly. But it only got worse. Before I could even get out of the water, her husband, the local cop, stomped through my gate, a frown etched on his brow. It seemed that my serene day had taken a sharp turn into the ridiculous. What I didn't know was that lurking just a short distance away was my brother, the police chief, who would soon find himself entangled in this ludicrous drama. So, let's dive into this story and see how it all unfolded. I had recently moved into this quiet suburban neighborhood, eager to embrace my own slice of paradise. The big backyard with its pool was a dream come true. I had spent years working hard, relentlessly climbing the corporate ladder, and now it was time to unwind. And unwind I did, most weekends, as I made the most of my outdoor haven. However, I quickly learned that some neighbors weren't keen on me having that much fun, especially Karen. She embodied the personality of a pit viper with a clipboard, and while she seemed pleasant on the surface, beneath that smile was someone who thought she had control over everyone's lives. Now, I was no stranger to HOAs. I had encountered more than my fair share in my previous homes, and had always brushed them off as petty annoyances. But Karen was another level. The moment I wandered past her yard with my kids, or made a little too much noise, she was there with her ruler and her rules. When her husband, Officer Mark, came barreling through the side gate, it felt like watching a slow-motion train wreck. "Get out of that pool," he yelled again, this time with more force. "You're banned from using it." "Banned?" I yelled back, incredulous. "You can't just ban me from my own property, Mark." "Oh, but I can," he replied, puffing his chest out, trying to exert some authority he clearly thought he had. "The HOA thinks your excessive swimming hours disturb the peace." "Disturb the peace?" I echoed, hands on my hips. "Your HOA doesn't dictate what I do with my property. Who decided this?" "That doesn't matter. You need to pack it up and leave that pool for the community. You're making it unwelcoming for Karen and others," he said. Before I could respond, I heard a voice from the side. My brother Jason, who had been staying with me for a while, stepped into view from the side of the house. He was casually munching on chips, eyes wide as he took in the scene, while leaning against the wall. "Hey, Mark," my brother called nonchalantly. "Didn't know you were here. What's going on?" Both Mark and Karen turned to face him, stunned. "What are you doing here?" Karen spluttered, clearly rattled. "I'm just hanging out." Jason shrugged, feigning innocence. "What about you? Looks like you're trying to strong-arm my brother into giving up his pool." Karen's face contorted in disbelief, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she connected the dots. "Wait, what do you mean your brother? Who is this?" Mark seemed flustered, realizing he had no idea who he was dealing with. "Look, this is a private matter. It doesn't concern you." But Jason wasn't about to let that slide. "Oh, it does concern me, because it's my brother's property, and Karen seems to think she can just come into our lives like a bully." "Bully?" Karen shrieked, her outrage palpable. "This is about community health and safety. You can't just swim all the time. It disturbs the neighborhood." "Is swimming a crime now? Don't you have better things to do?" I retorted, crossing my arms. "I'm pretty sure this is my property. What you're doing is totally against the HOA guidelines. If you don't comply, you'll face serious consequences." Karen hissed back defensively, her frustration escalating. And just like that, the absurdity of it all finally clicked for Mark. It was as if he suddenly realized he was at the wrong end of the stick, and one of the scariest things to his authority was someone who was actually part of the family attached to the property. "Hold on, wait a minute," Mark said, looking back and forth between me and my brother. "You mean to say this is Chief Jason?" "Correct," Jason said, smirking. I'm actually his brother, and I think you need to think twice about barging into my brother's backyard and trying to dictate property rules." Karen's demeanor shifted dramatically, realizing she had immensely overstepped her bounds. "I didn't know." Her voice faltered. "That doesn't change the fact that this isn't how neighborhood governance should work." At this point, I burst out laughing. "So now it's about governance? You're a joke, Karen. You can't just scream, trespass, and then hope you can play the victim." Mark looked very uncomfortable at this point, glancing between us and realizing that perhaps he was in over his head. "I think Karen made a mistake. We don't need to escalate this." "No," Karen interjected desperately. "We need to enforce community rules." My brother began to walk towards Mark and Karen. "Let me clarify something for you both," he said, his voice steady. "My brother is following the law, and he is well within his rights to enjoy his own property. If you think bullying him in his own backyard is going to change anything, you're mistaken." I watched as realization began to sink in for them both. Karen was left sputtering, practically fuming with indignation, while Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights. "You can't treat property owners like this," I said, taking my cue from Jason. "There's more at stake here than rules. It's about respect." Challenging them, I added, "If I had known that my having fun with my kids would bring about this level of harassment, I would have opted for a more private setting." Karen's face twisted into one of disbelief. It was clear she simply did not possess an ounce of reasoning in her desperation to control. Mark finally turned to her. "What do you think this will achieve? Do you want to take this to court? Are you ready to face the chief of police?" Mark had drawn the line. He had his moment of clarity, but standing there beside my brother made it clear that they were on either side of a dangerous game. "I'll bet the HOA doesn't want to deal with a lawsuit. That could be disastrous for us all," I chimed in, making sure to keep the weight of my words on the table. Finally, Karen threw her hands up in frustration. "I'm not done with this. You will regret this." "Oh, I think this has already turned into a regrettable situation for you, Karen," I said, enjoying how the table had turned. "You could have just left me alone and let me enjoy my space. Now look at where you are." As she stormed off, Mark took a moment to collect himself. "Look, I really didn't mean to invade," he said quietly, turning to my brother and then me. "I'll let her know what's going on. This was mismanaged." "Glad to hear that, Mark," Jason replied calmly. "You might want to think about how you enforce those rules. For future reference, don't even think about dictating someone's property without knowing who you're dealing with." As they departed, I could feel the tension lifting. I jumped back into the pool and let myself soak in the victory. The absurdity of having someone step into the middle of my backyard and dictate how I lived life had dissipated, and now I was free to resume my day. "You know," I called out to my brother when I noticed him chuckling, "I think this whole thing turned out pretty well given the circumstances." He laughed back at me. "You could say that. Who knew chaos could deliver such entertainment?" And then we fell into laughter together, two brothers relishing in the brilliance of holding our ground against those who thought entitlement gave them permission to overstep boundaries. The entire scene had left me with a heightened sense of gratitude for my family, both immediate and chosen. I knew that no matter what boat Karen was sailing in, we had each other, and that was what really mattered. The next few weeks saw a settled peace in the neighborhood, the irony of it all being that Karen learned a hard lesson about respecting boundaries. While my home was a place of laughter and community, her authority had frayed under the weight of her misjudgments. And as for Mark, well, he seemed to have learned that enforcing rules didn't mean losing empathy, fostering understanding, or crossing the line. Maybe there was hope for this neighborhood after all. In the end, incidents like these remind you that you can't control the will of others, only how you choose to respond to it. And standing up for your family and your rights is a lesson worth learning at any age or in any community. As we moved forward, I embraced the laughter and joy in my backyard, knowing that no entitled neighbor would ever overshadow the unity we had forged as a family. Each day became a reminder that even when faced with obstacles, we hold the power to create the environment we want to live in, one pool party at a time.